Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're doing fine. Today I'm going to go through some more Quora questions. Let's dive right into it. Okay, so the first question here is why has Britain, a relatively isolated island, suffered the most from COVID-19 among European countries? I'm not sure that's really accurate to say that it's the most. I think France, for example, is in a much more dire situation than England is. Secondly, when you say isolated island, look, we're not in the first century BC. There are airplanes, there are boats, but especially airplanes. And because of globalization these days, everybody's moving around from country to country. The other thing to consider here, and this one, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But apparently, in March 2020, a group of European universities did a research on the spread of COVID and concluded that it started in either Europe or the US, then spread to China, then spread back to Europe and the US. So there's an article. If you're interested, you can go ahead and read it. I will link it if you like, just ask in the comments. There were the military games held in Wuhan in October 2019, and some people got sick. All 5 cases were Americans. And so, yeah, there was that. According to Israel, U.S. intelligence agencies alerted Israel to the coronavirus outbreak in China in November 2019, at a time when China was not even aware of its existence. Could the 5 sick athletes be the reason the U.S. knew? The Red Cross did some investigation in December, so that would be like 2019. So California, in Oregon, and Washington, it produced 39 infections. Belleville Mayor Michael Melham said he posted positive for coronavirus antibodies, adding that he believes he was sick with the virus in November 2019. And finally, a team of researchers in a northern city in France announced last year it had identified 2 X-rays from November 16 and November 18, 2019, showing symptoms consistent with the novel coronavirus. So, look, I'm just telling you that so you can kind of go do more of your research. There's definitely a lot more to the story that they're letting us on. So, yeah, just do your research. But this question in particular, there's a lot of it's very inaccurately phrased, let's just say. Okay, next question. Is it good to buy frozen fruits and vegetables to eat during the coronavirus 19 pandemic? I don't understand the question. It's like, what? Okay, why not? Yes, go ahead. Okay, next question. Is the Japanese work culture toxic? Okay, so there are many layers to this question actually. One layer is that, uh, contrary to common belief, Japanese people don't work as much as it's thought. I think the numbers show that South Koreans work a long, many hours, and in fact, Al Jazeera had a pretty good mini documentary about that, where they talked about the crazy culture there and also the crazy drinking culture. They said that, and look, okay, you have to double check the numbers, always double check the numbers. But basically, they said that on average in Russia, for example, people have 6 shots of alcohol per week. But in Korea, that number is like 12 or 13. And that was my image there when I worked, because I worked in South Korea. And it was like my image that, wow, South Koreans do drink a lot, you know? So, yeah. Okay, so there's that. Japanese regular companies don't work as much as you think they are. The productivity here is actually quite low, unfortunately. But then you have to consider other stories. Like, for example, there was the famous case with the company called Dentsu. They had a young female intern working for them, and they basically like overworked her by giving her a tremendous amount of like overtime hours. And I know this is happening because I know one person right now who is clocking a lot of overtime hours. And I'm a little bit worried about that person. So that case ended up in the young woman unfortunately committing suicide. Um, so there's that. But also the other layer there to this question is, what about the workers at work? Are they actually happy, or is it a toxic environment? I think there you have to look at what industry you're talking about. Because if you're working in the office, say, maybe some kind of travel agency, I'm sure it's a bit more obviously relaxed than, say, work in a hospital. But I can tell you that in hospital environments here, it is very stressful and people fight each other all the time, and it is toxic. It's absolutely a toxic environment where the egos come into play. So yeah, I would say like people need to chill out, like tone it down. Like these people with huge egos, man. Like, come on, just take a chill pill. So, is Japanese work culture toxic? Overall, I would say yes. Okay, next question is by Faith Lawton, who wants to know: is there a way to go to Japan for a week or two to help poor communities or disaster relief? So this question is a kind of important one because if you consider, for example, the big earthquake in 2011, I'm sure people who were sitting somewhere in France or Switzerland, they were watching the horrible scenes on television with the tsunamis just wiping out the coastal areas. And you wanna like you feel like kind of inspired in a way to go and help these places. So there are organizations already set up for this kind of purpose, and they're ready to go. Now, as far as you're concerned, you may want to go, but I think it's pretty difficult. You'd have to apply for some kind of special visa, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's great. People want to help out. I mean, that's the thing. If you, for example, witness an air crash, which just happens right outside your building, a lot of people, I think, the reaction will be to freeze up. I know that because in my case, in some cases, I wanted to react sometimes in life, and I just totally froze up. I regret that, but I feel like it kind of made me ready for the next time. So now I know that feeling. I freeze up, but next time I will not freeze up. There are other people who just, are your classic YouTuber and they take out a cell phone and start taking videos and pictures, which sometimes is good because you need to alert certain like news agencies that, hey, there's a plane crash and that people are dying right now, send help here. So that aspect is okay, but a lot of the a lot of the people are just trying to fish for clicks, unfortunately. The internet, the YouTube is mostly people fishing for clicks. So yeah, I don't think they have some kind of deeper, like super moral, super noble point of view, and finally, yeah, you got the people who just kind of jump into the fire and they don't care. They just want to help people. And I think, like, for example, me, I'm at that stage right now. Like, I don't care about myself, but I would definitely try to save other people. Yeah. Okay, next question. How was life like in Japan between 45 and 1950? Well, I'm not an expert on Japan, but I can tell you that between 45 and 50, well, the country was in ruins, thanks to the US bombings nonstop, and of course the nuclear bombs as well. The country was just destroyed. The economy was in tatters, and it was tough. It was those 5 years, especially, were very tough for people. But Japan, they because of the deal they made with the US pumped a lot of money into Japan, and Japan was able to recover relatively quickly, actually. Just in a few years, they were able to rebuild a lot and get economy going, etc. So, yeah, I would say between 45 and 50 was tough, but they did rebuild quite quickly and they got back on track. Are food workers required to wear gloves during the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, look, that's what I always say. When it comes to the pandemic, there are a couple of things you have to do. First of all, you have to wear a mask. Secondly, you have to wear gloves. And thirdly, you guessed it, you have to wear glasses because guess what? If you start touching your eyes, it goes right into your body, man. So if you look at the healthcare workers in the hospitals, you'll notice that they always have a full facial cover, which covers the eyes. It's so important. So, of course, I don't know because I'm sure this varies from company to company, but I would assume that yes, it's very common practice for food workers to wear gloves. Yes, absolutely. Okay, next question, and I'm definitely not an expert on this one, but I just want to make a comment here, which is interesting. So, how educated are the Vietnamese in general compared to Japanese and South Korean? The Human Development Index, Vietnam is 117th, China is 85th, Portugal 38th, okay, Japan 19th, South Korea 23rd. Um, I'm not sure, like the human develop because the Human Development Index is a bunch of variables, so I'm not really sure that's an appropriate thing to compare. But okay, I'm not sure about the education of Vietnamese people, but I can tell you one thing: Vietnamese people, a lot of them, are very hardworking, and they are very brave as well. Because, for example, they would just try to go to South Korea or they try to go to Japan, um, and they really like learn the language very quickly, and they become very very useful people, members of those societies. Um, yeah, it's kind of debatable here. I mean, it really kind of depends on an individual. I wouldn't say it depends on a race because that's not true at all. But it feels to me that some countries like Israel, for example, Jewish people are very good with money issues and helping each other out, and that's why their communities are so strong and tight. It's not like us, like white people in general. We're very kind of independent and broken up, and we don't really help each other out, even though we could. So yeah, it's a difference of mentality, I think, more than anything. And I feel like Vietnamese people have a very strong mentality in that they want to progress as much as possible, and they're very good at that. So yeah, I would say that maybe so education. I don't know, but they're very skilled at certain things, and so and they learn and grow very quickly. That's the thing. Okay, last question for today. Why does the world have a special kind of intrigue for Japanese culture? Um, does it? I mean, because if you're talking about Asian culture in general, China has a lot of culture. China has a very rich history. In a way, a history much richer than Japan's. Korea has a history as well. They also had a period of, kind of like horse riders, knights. Well, not knights, but kind of fighters. Not quite samurai, but almost samurai-like. Japan is, but I wouldn't say that that's even true because if you look at K-pop these days, K-pop is extremely well marketed. Like whoever is behind K-pop is doing a great job because, in my opinion, by the way, K-pop sucks. I hate K-pop. Pop in general, I should say, but K-pop is like, in particular, kind of appeals to a certain category of the people out there. Um, they're very good at marketing that thing. So I don't agree with that, but they're very good at marketing, and many people in the world know K-pop. Also, Korean dramas are very popular. People think that life in Korea is just like in those Korean dramas, which is not true at all. In China, you got kind of the same thing, but China is not very good at marketing its things. When was the last time you watched a Chinese movie? No, like real question. And whereas compared to Korean movies, we see a lot of horror, etc. But in China, I think the problem is they have, the Ministry of Culture, I think it's called, and basically they are in charge of like going through the movies, etc. So there are many topics, many things which they ban. So maybe China has a lot of, like, for example, horror movies, but they're all banned by that Ministry of Culture, and so we never get to see them, never at all. On the other hand, also China blocks a lot of things that come from the West and from Japan as well. There are certain games which they block in China, for example, the kind of more like hentai games, etc. So yeah, Japan. Well, Japan has a huge anime culture. It's called the otaku culture. I would say that, well, I'm a foreigner, so the expectations on me are lower. But I would definitely say I'm an otaku, but I am not as otaku as a Japanese typical otaku person. These guys, they follow the writers of anime series, they follow the voice actors, and every time there's some kind of press conference, they know exactly who these people are, and I don't. So yeah, there's that. Like I can go, I can see, oh, this person directed that, I know, but I don't know specifically their names or anything like that. Uh so also, of course, Japan is pretty well developed in general, and I think that has a certain appeal to it. Although I feel that in the past 30 years, things have stagnated quite a bit. I thought, for example, the future of robotics would be in Japan, but not at all. I think the Boston Dynamics are way, way more far ahead than anything developed in Japan. So is there a possibility of some kind of new Japanese renaissance? Yes, absolutely. There are many talented Japanese people in Japan, and usually their progress is inhibited by the old people who follow very old ways, old methods. But I think that as this changes, Japan will become kind of unleashed. It's kind of a sleeping giant in many ways right now. Okay, that's all for today. That's all I want to talk about. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please drop them in the comments section. I always enjoy, discussions and conversations about these topics. And yeah, look, stay safe, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.